I'm Lauren with Pack Hacker, and today we're going to be taking a detailed look at the Boundary Supply Port Kit, which I've been testing for the last 2 weeks. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up so we can keep helping you find the right gear. Let's dive in. So the port kit is a little bit of a two-part thing. So it's two separate pouches that do come together and do attach. And I'll get into each one separately, but this is kind of how they end up slotting together. This side here is the toiletry kit, while this one on this side is the tech pouch. So they are very similar sizes, a little bit on the larger side, so it kind of depends on how much you actually need to carry on how well that these will kind of integrate in with the stuff that you already have. But they are a little bit low profile. This one here is larger than the other, as you can see. It does just come out a little bit more just in general, which is handy because a lot of the time my toiletries are going to be a little bit thicker than the tech stuff that I carry. So that worked out for that. And so kind of giving you an idea of how these separate here. I have these buckled on this bottom side, and then these, when these are separated, these will just kind of flap around, so they buckle right in here. And then this closure is a magnetic closure, and this one is pretty secure, and it just kind of comes apart. You can tell that there's a little bit of a track on either side, so it slides in pretty nicely. It just kind of depends on how you want to get it out. If you want to just kind of rip it out, that works fine, or kind of pulling this side in to detach works as well. So they come apart really easily, and this is how I mostly carried them. There were a few trips that I took where I did need to bring both of them along, and it was nice to have the option to put them together, though I did find that it got really bulky. So this here, sliding it into a bag is going to take up a fair amount of space, right? Like this is a relatively large packing cube size. Even a compressed packing cube is going to be smaller than this in terms of width. So something to keep in mind if your bag is tight on space, that you might not utilize them together quite as much. But the perk of this is that this system works with other Boundary Supply bags. So you can attach these within your bag, and they'll hang in a designated spot, and it keeps everything pretty secure. So that is really nice and thoughtful. It's nice when things features integrate with each other. So in terms of just aesthetics here, we have a boundary here, and then boundary here as well. But otherwise, it's pretty minimal. There's a little bit of branding on the zipper pulls here. And all of these zippers are YKK zippers. So on here, and then all of these as well. And these seams are reverse coil, and that just helps with the weatherproofing. So the materials are a little bit elusive on this one. This one here, they describe as a waterproof material. The water does roll off really nicely. So if it does get wet, and this is going to be something you obviously have in a bathroom with you, that's really great because, you don't really have to worry about the water rolling off, and it does roll off really easily, and then it, kind of, brushes off and all that, easy to clean. And then this one here, it's kind of like the other bags that they have. So it's I guess safe to assume it would be like a Codra nylon, but because they don't have any materials listed either within here or on their website, it's kind of hard to tell what it actually is. But it does have like a nylon-y feel to it, like that kind of rougher, like canvasy almost. But it is soft, fairly flexible as well, depending on what you need. And then this one here is almost like a tarpaulin, and you can tell that there's a little bit of like blemishing on this side here. So that tracks only because tarpaulin does blemish a little bit easier. So moving on to the inside, we'll start with the tech side here. There is a front pocket with a YKK zipper. And then on the inside here, I kept mostly like low profile things that I wanted to get to often. So I have a pair of headphones and then a notebook. So I didn't really keep anything else in here just because it is a fairly flat pocket, and the more that this stuffed out, it started impacting the space on the inside. So I kept things that I wanted to quickly access that were a little bit smaller in this pocket. And then on the inside here is a fairly open tub. So here's where the organization gets a little bit tricky for me personally. There are these two mesh elastic edged pockets here, and this is where I keep, my charging block and then my cable. So that's, where I keep my laptop charging organization. And then on the center here, I just kind of had to dump things in, right? So, you can put like your mouse in there if you wanted to keep it separate, if you wanted to double up, or you could do, your other charging brick if that's something that you wanted to keep organized. It's totally, obviously, up to you how you want to organize all the gear that you have. I did find it to be a little bit tricky only because I just found myself dumping things in here a lot. So then that's why I started keeping things out here specifically, was because if I have my headphones in here plus a notebook in here, when I open it out, I find myself fishing around a little bit. Obviously 3 items is a little bit easier to find, but the more you toss in here, the harder it's going to be to find things. And then another thing that I found myself doing as well is with these elastic loops on this side, there's 4 of them here, and they're really tight. So I found it pretty difficult to get things in and out easily, which meant that if I was in a pinch and I was, rushing to leave, or, I just need to kind of stuff everything in here and go, I just dumped everything in the center pocket, and then that's when stuff started to get pretty unorganized. So just to kind of give you an example, this here is just a standard iPhone charging cable. And then to show you how it goes in this way, try and make it visible for you. It's a really tight elastic, so I'm making it as thin as humanly possible to get it so that it's low profile to stick in there, and then it can expand out. But where I ran into a large problem was with something like this, where this is a fairly thick cable that I use for my fast charger, and this one here was harder to get in. Obviously, it's been sitting in there for a while, so it has stretched out. So it's a little bit easier to slide in right now. But when I would switch over, say, to this one, that wasn't quite as stretched, it would just put up a little bit of a fight. So they do gain stretch over time. I just found that more often than not, when I went to go put my cables in there, I either didn't wrap them up enough, or they were a little bit too disorganized, and sometimes it was easier for me to just toss everything in. So that is that tech side over there, and then there are these loops here if you wanted to, hang additionally. And then on the toiletry kit side, we have one large clamshell zipper. So that opens up into this main compartment here. And you can see it's a little bit of a bucket. So obviously, I will get into that in a second. Oh, I left that unzipped. So with this main bucket here, you do have a lot of depth. So to kind of give you an example, I have this like larger hairspray. And this obviously doesn't fit within one of these elastics. So what I was able to do was just kind of like leave larger items off to the sides where these weren't secured. And that space that it took up, you can see from the side, it's pretty much the depth of the actual DOP kit. So this is something where it kind of depends on how large your containers actually are. It depends on like how well this will actually work for you. So if you have a lot of larger things like this, these elastics may not be super useful for you, but you still do have a lot of depth in order to kind of lay everything out as you need to. And I was even able to, say that all 4 of these were taken up. I was able to, stick toothpaste here. I could stick this on this side, and everything it wasn't necessarily organized, but I could get a lot of random items in here. There was ones where I had to have, a fair amount of makeup items with me, so I just kind of tossed everything in here. And it was a nice little bucket for myself. It wasn't, obviously, like I said, very organized, but that's all right if that's something that you're okay with. And then on this side here, we have a mesh zippered pocket with a little bit of, you see it's like a little plastic backing there to keep any spills contained. And in here, you can keep lower profile, flatter items. I have just eye drops, not mouthwash, and my face lotion, but you can load this up with a fair amount of stuff. Just keep in mind that if you pack this out so much that when you flip it back over, it might start to clash with larger items there. But there is a fair amount of space there to give you a little bit of distance if that's something that you need. There's a little bit of wiggle room there. And then on this side over here, there is a loop for a toothbrush. So that is handy there, or if you have anything else that's smaller that you want to go in there, that works as well. And then on the back is another zippered pocket. This one I found very hard to get into just because if I wanted to get into it, it was easier to have nothing in here, but that means that you have to unpack everything, right? Or if you're the kind of person who, when you get to a destination, you take everything out and you leave it in the bathroom until you're done, then that's great. For me, I try and keep everything pretty contained while I'm somewhere. So I found with, right now, trying to get in here, easy peasy. But if I had 1, 2, and 3 in here, unzipping it and getting in here, it just felt a little bit too stiff for me. So with everything flying around, especially if you have, your toothbrush and then something else, and then, say that's there and you are taking advantage of that kind of empty bucket, you're going to be fighting loose items. So flipping this up, trying to get in there, it gets a little bit tighter, especially with this toothbrush here. But getting things out of here can get a little bit tight. So I kept this mostly with super flat items that I didn't use a ton. And then when I did use them, I could just take them out, leave them out, and then not really worry about getting in and out of there super often. So for instance, like I wouldn't put eye drops in there because I want to use those relatively frequently. And this would just get a little bit fussy for me. So the organization is pretty minimal in here, and it just kind of depends on, the size of your items that you have, how it works for you. And the last thing with this one here is that on this back is this kind of strap system, and this is so that you can hang it on I guess it would be more so this way, hang it on like a towel rack or something like that. So this comes off, it's a little magnetic closure, as you can see there. And you would remove this, put this on, the outside of a rack facing toward you, and then you can expand this elastic, loop it around, and then you've got this space which ends up, hanging it for you. So it ends up, actually I was doing that upside down, but it ends up being just like this, and then this slides along this kind of like nylon rail here, and then you have this part that's actually hanging off of the rack, and then it hangs relatively flat. I was actually kind of surprised at how well it balanced, and then when you open this up, obviously these items here would fall out, but you're able to access all of your items and just kind of leave it hanging until you're ready for it. The one thing, apart from the fact that if you have loose items in here, obviously hanging it up, they're going to fall out. So, if you utilize that sort of bucket shape, keeping that in mind. But also the zippers on the bottom, right? So if this is hanging up, then the zipper here will be open and your stuff can fall out. It's not doing it right now because it's getting caught on this lip, but that is a possibility, especially if it gets jostled around. But it is, you know, with this weatherproof or waterproof material here, if you wanted to bring it into the shower, you could. I personally would leave it out just because with these zippers here, stuff can still get on the inside and then this elastic will get wet. So that's a feature that exists. But I would use this mostly on the outside on a towel rack or something like that. So once you're done, zip everything up. You can move this back down the rail, re-tighten this so that it lays flatter here, and then put these two together so that they fit back together, or put them back into your bag separately. So there you have it, the Boundary Supply Port Kit. Thanks for keeping it here at Pack Hacker, your guide to smarter travel, and we'll see you in the next video.